Having assumed the male role of a young refugee, the player in this game suffers persecution and discrimination as he is forced to leave his country of origin, make dire decisions in the process, and try to fit into foreign society and culture as an asylum seeker. Along the lines of what C. Red Mills defined as the sociological imagination, the game provides a window into understanding and comprehending the reality and strife most refugees go through, as it allows the player to extricate him or herself from their usual day-to-day life and venture into that of a refugee. The storyline places the incumbent in a country where he is forced to flee because of his dissident political views and beliefs, though not before testing the same by way of physical duress, a scenario all too common in a world widely divided by antagonistic political, racial, and religious paradigms. In this scenario, the push factors far surpass the desire or even the possibility to stay and resist, since they compromise his physical safety and/or loss of life. In his efforts to escape, the protagonist is faced with tough decisions such as having to choose between family, friends, or neighbors, or having to leave his best friend behind for his own sake. The levels of uncertainty and anxiety are further heightened as our character is not able to tell foe from friend along the way to safety, or the lesser evil among several different avenues out of his ordeal. Once out of the country and having lost virtually everyone and everything in the process, the refugee is faced with the prospect of having to adapt to a new reality and social structures far removed from those he was forced to leave behind not long before. Unable to communicate or understand the uses and costumes of the new country, he is also subject of suspicion, prejudice, fear, and straight-out rejection. This experience has a great sociological significance in that similar scenarios continue to occur on a regular and widespread fashion the world over. As much as the circumstances or driving factors may differ from those presented in this case, the substance of what so many persecuted people suffer for their beliefs and actions stands. From the perspective that political globalization permits, one could argue that through the creation and increased reach of intergovernmental organizations, international NGOs, and social movements, many refugees have a voice and can find shelter where there would be none should they not exist. Though not portrayed in the experience of the game's subject of this analysis, the significance of this organization continues to increase in favor of the victims of persecution. Similarly, it could also be argued that cultural globalization plays a beneficial role to refugees, as the increased cultural exposure that it promotes could reduce the communication barriers to some extent, as well as helping mitigate the fear and rejection of refugees in an increasingly aware, acquainted, and sympathetic society. A final argument in favor of cultural globalization is that the presence and strengthening of diasporas in different regions could represent a safety net and shelter to many of those displaced by war and other push factors in a familiar and welcoming environment.